welcome to What Happens Next, a series curated as part of Sahas's ongoing endeavor to equip survivors of gender-based and sexual violence and active bystanders with information toward empowered decision-making. Today, I'm joined by Bhairavi of the Mitra Trust, who will tell us a little bit about what happens next when a person who's faced gender-based or sexual violence chooses to opt to be part of a safe space. Hi, Bhairavi. Thank you so much for joining me on this. It's a pleasure to always be able to work with you.
Hi, Kirti. Thanks so much for doing this and for giving folks the knowledge. I'm sure many wonder like what happens, what do we do, where do we go? And it's awesome that you're able to give them this resource. So thank you for that.
Of course, and who better to help us understand a safe space than you? But before we get into that, Bhairavi, I'd love to ask you to tell us a little bit about your work and yourself and your engagement in this space.
Sure. So I'm a psychologist. I run Mitra Trust. And the focus of Mitra is essentially to provide spaces for self-expression, self-reflection, and to have safe and brave spaces. We used to do these online. We used to do these offline. Clearly, pandemic has made everything online, which is great also because we get to have folks from across the country come in and join us. And that's been really interesting to see. Essentially, the sessions happen over weekends on a Friday evening and a Sunday afternoon. And we have Let's Discuss the Mayor, where we speak. We have Doodles for the Mayor, where we doodle. We have Writing Affirmations for the Mayor, where we end up writing. And the Doodles and writing is led by Advaita Das. And Let's Discuss the Mayor, I lead. So it's a mix of different forms of spaces just to get us to connect with ourselves a little bit more, to engage with the emotions and the thoughts that can be overwhelming, or it can be very numb, which is what the Mayor is. It's just, I'm really overwhelmed or I'm so numb. I'm just not okay. It's just a really simple way to see it. And the spaces are there for that.
That is beautiful. Thank you for creating and nurturing these spaces, by the way. As someone who has also benefited from it, I think I can very, very confidently say that it's a beautiful experience. And anyone who's thinking about it, hopefully this conversation brings you on board to be part of this. So what is a safe space, Bhairavi, if you could define that for people who are still grappling with the idea?
So the way that I look at a safe space is a place where people can come, they can share, they can talk, they can also listen. And it's a space where you feel validated, where you feel seen, where there's a sense of belonging and there's a sense of connectedness that's there, where you feel like you're not the only one that's going through something. There's like this community, there's a group of people that's going through it. And in our safe spaces, we also find a lot of laughter. Because that essentially comes from me. I like to laugh through all of the nonsense that life throws our way. Not in a way that diminishes anything, in a way that's very respectful, but it's an important skill to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for welcoming laughter in a safe way. That is also a very empowering aspect of just the whole process of creating these spaces. So I noticed you also talked about brave spaces. Now, what is a brave space? What is a safe space? And how do they differ?
So I'm sure there are academic reasons as to what is safe and what is brave, but I'll come to it from a lived experience perspective and from a facilitating perspective. In our sessions, we have space for people to make mistakes. We have space for disagreements, maybe. We have space for people to express a difference in opinion. And that's really important because each one of us comes with a different experience. Our context is different. Everything about us is so different, yet there are so many similarities. So brave space is a space that has space for mistakes, that has space for misgivings, that has space for people to apologize, to receive apologies, to ask for apology. And that's really important because we're all not perfect. And acknowledging that is part of the work that we do. It's one of the rules that we set up at the start, that there is a space for mistake. And that for me is essentially where the braveness of the space comes in, where you're willing to be so, you're feeling safe, you're feeling connected, you're feeling good, and you're willing to make a mistake. You don't feel like, that level of non-judgment that's there in a safe space extends beyond, and also then helps us be brave.
So beautifully put, so beautifully put. So, what can a safe space or a safe circle offer to a person who has faced gender-based or sexual violence?
So this is something that I've been asking for a while as well. It's something that I wanted to see because there are two kind of groups that end up coming to the sessions. They've adopted the sessions pretty much during the lockdown, the queer community and those who face gender-based violence. And I was always wondering, like, what is it that we're doing that's automatically, calling out to these people, where folks who attend it are like, you know what, this is an actual safe space. Go there and use those services. Like, what is it that we're doing, right? So the focus within these sessions is not on any kind of diagnosis or not on any kind of problem. So it doesn't matter if you have a clinical diagnosis. It doesn't matter what has happened to you. What we kind of unpack is where you're at right now. How are you engaging with life? So if you want to share your story, you're welcome to share your story. If you don't want to share your story, it doesn't have to be about that, because we're not all just one thing. So for folks, with identity, they're not just that one thing with their identity. For folks who are survivors, we're not just one thing based on our identity. And that for me is what I would say at this point in time. Is I think, I could be wrong, I could be mistaken, and there's of course space for that. But I feel like maybe that's why people are coming and attending our sessions. And the beautiful thing about it is we've kind of embraced that, and we signpost it very well that this is a space that's safe for the queer community. It is a safe space for gender-based violence. And for a lot of people who don't necessarily understand what gender-based violence is, we break it down and we say that if you face any kind of, physical, emotional kind of violence, this is a safe space for you. And that's there at every sign up. It's there in the posters. And that's important, because if there are folks that are not aligned with this, that don't necessarily want to be around this, then they know that, okay, this space is not for me, which is equally important. We don't try to be a one size fits all approach for everybody. That's not going to work. So just as the folks have adopted us, we've completely embraced that. And we're like, okay, this is what we're here to do. And this is, what we've kind of honed in on.
That is so beautiful. In so many ways, I think that this in itself is such an act of subversion, because there is no need to be what you're not. It's just about opening up a space to be what we can be, and then accepting the ways in which we can evolve in that. Truly beautiful. So you did talk a little bit about these programs, by the way, but if you could just go into a little more detail of what the sessions at the Mitra Trust look like, if you could just maybe offer a little bit of an insight into what one could expect in each, that would be great.
Sure. So with Let's Discuss the Mayor, that's the first session that we ran. It came out of depression and my own lived experiences with depression. We created something called the Mayor Kit, Writing Out Depression, and that was like a very physical product. And it started off with physical sessions where we wanted a group of people going through depressive episodes to just come together and talk about it. And just find that sense of community, and to use the kit as just a way to like break the ice, and to use the tools in the kit as something that there's a great takeaway from that. And once we moved online, we tried to do that also, but the idea is that it's a talking space. So there are 6 participants, and there's me who's a facilitator. And we just talk. We use elements from the kit where we begin illustrations. So we do like to use art quite a bit, because it just opens you up. If you're not ready to talk, if you don't know what to talk about, art is a great way to kind of, and Undefined Comics has done such a good job illustrating these depressive episodes and just the mayor and how we feel. And with the pandemic, it's moved way beyond depression. So we don't even talk about depression now. It's just about so many other things. And the mayor has also moved beyond just depression. It's just a state of being not okay. So that's a 2.5-hour sessions that happens. And then we have Doodles for the mayor, which Advaita runs. That was the second session that we started. So Advaita and I do it. So I'm there for mental health support. And the idea behind this was, a lot of us find it very difficult to connect with emotions or thoughts. We find it very overwhelming. So what's a safe way that we can do this, that we can engage with our emotions, and again, learn it as a tool. So the doodle session is not an art class. It's legit just doodles. I mean, I'm somebody who, when I started the doodle session, I couldn't even doodle a whole page. It'd just be like at the corner. And then over the year and a half now, I've been able to like consistently doodle. And it's just dashes and strokes and just very simple things that Advaita kind of takes us through. It's a facilitated session. They're talking through the entire time. And we then slowly started integrating based on feedback. People were having responses in their bodies. So we already had breathing that we do. We started integrating a lot more trauma-informed movements, just things that can help reset the nervous system, because again, emotions can be overwhelming. And we invite our inner child to come out and play. And for those of us who have trouble with the inner child, we invite any version of ourselves, even the version of ourselves from 5 minutes ago, to come sit and play. And to doodle and to color. We use a non-dominant hand, and we use really interesting emotion sets. So let's say there's a overwhelming emotion that you think is not okay, that you don't know how to deal with, like anger. Then we kind of work through anger, and then the second part of it, we might be like, okay, what is another emotion set that we can bring in? Maybe calm. And then we work through calm. So the sets are very well thought out. And it's meant to close out the session in a very grounded, anchoring, light way. So even if there is any anger that's remaining, during the calm part of it, it kind of comes out and kind of gets resolved. So that session is for an hour and 15 minutes. And we've got writing affirmations for the mayor, which is great. So with the doodle session, it always ends with a bit of affirmations that Advaita says out. And we were like, hey, folks really seem to like this. Can we see how we can engage with writing affirmations and engaging just deeper within our own selves on how we'd like to just structure affirmations for ourselves and engage with it. And we follow that same pattern there, where it's 2 sets of affirmations. So let's take the same emotions of anger and calm. You'll affirm that anger, you'll validate it, you'll say that I see it, I see the purpose of it even. And then you kind of work through those affirmation sets. Then you go into calm and you're like, hey, I invite calm into my life. And you work through those affirmation sets for calm as well. That's what we have going on right now. And we've just recently introduced a Queering the Matrix session. And that's a way, again, it's very similar to the Let's Discuss the Mayor session in that it's a talking format. But it's got 2 other facilitators in addition to me. So one is Joe, who not only has lived experiences, but is also an anthropologist and a PhD scholar in this area. And they have a lot of contextual knowledge. And then we have Rahel, who's part of Team Mitra, who also has lived experiences and is a budding psychologist. So the 3 of us together, along with like 6 participants, basically go through and any questions, and it's very specific for folks who are at the beginning of their queer journey, who are questioning, who have, or just at the beginning of anything to do with identity, basically, and would like to unpack it. There's no age restriction for it. It doesn't mean that, only those in their 20s are questioning. We have folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s questioning. So it's open for absolutely anybody. So yeah, that's the long and short of it.
What an offering. What an offering. And I truly hope folks that are listening find their way to one, if not all of these sessions, and enjoy the benefits that so many of us have reaped in the process. But coming back to a very specific group of people, if a person who has faced any form of gender-based or sexual violence wants to participate in any of these sessions, what are some of the things they should know beforehand, or perhaps what should they expect beforehand?
So this is a session that's a mix. So it's not a session only for, let's say, cishet women. So there's a mix there. In some of the other spaces that survivors might be used to, it might only be cishet women that they're engaging with. So this space might not be only that. It's not a homogenous group in that sense. And not everybody in that space would necessarily understand the ins and outs of survivorship or the journey, because it's not specific to that. But what folks will get is a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding, and a lot of strength and support. They will be seen. and their journeys will be, there's just a lot of lightness that I have seen at the end of the sessions. There's been a lot of shifts and changes that you can see, and participants do hold space. And even if they'd like to go into details about what happened, if they're feeling ready to do so, and the others in the group find it, triggering for their own journeys, we do have safekeeping mechanisms there, where at the start we talk a lot about trigger warnings. We talk a lot about setting expectations of what you'd like out of a share. If you don't want anybody to add on anything, you're free to say that, right? As soon as you finish your share, you can be like, hey, I just wanted to be heard. And that will be respected. So these are things that can get tricky otherwise, especially if we don't know what we expect out of a share. And somebody else comes in and says, hey, how about this? How about that? And you're like, I didn't want that. And this helps us know how to kind of seek support, ask for support in spaces that we might not have received in real life, out of our Zoom meetings that we have, where we have people who are very affirming, who are very kind, who are very compassionate. We might not get that. So this is a great way for us to kind of learn how to ask for support, how to receive support, equally give support. Each member who comes to this space has a lot to do to ensure that it's a safe space, not just for themselves, but for the others there also. So yeah, I guess those are some of the things to keep in mind.
Of course. And if you could speak a little bit to the benefits of participating in such a circle for someone who's faced any form of gender-based or sexual violence.
One would just be that feeling of speaking. Whether you want your story to be known, not known, you just want to talk, it's a great space to do that. The identity or the tag of survivor doesn't follow you into the space. It's completely up to you whether you'd like to share it or not. And as you go through the shares, you'll see that many folks are more than one thing. And if you see yourself or you're having struggle with that tag of just only being a survivor, not wanting to be seen as that, you'll get to see that. And that can be a really powerful shift that happens. There's a lot of, I don't know, just a sense of community. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of care in a very healthy, balanced manner. And that's really, really important. And I mean, I don't know what to say other than come and experience a session and tell us what you get out of it. Because with each person who shared their story, with each person who's giving us feedback about the program and how they're feeling about it, it's so different because it's so relational to where they are in their journey. And because it's not just about any one thing, it's about your underlying, emotions and your underlying thoughts. It can go really deep. So it can be extremely transformative. And these sessions are supported by grant funding. So that really helps in making sure that it's accessible. It really helps in making sure that you get the kind of help that you need.
Absolutely. And that can go such a long mile in making these sessions accessible, and when the economics of it all doesn't serve as an impediment. Finally, Bhairavi, before I let you go, actually, before I get into that, I want to take a moment to truly appreciate you for helping me see the logic in shifting my language. Earlier at Sahas, it was a steady practice to use the word survivor over victim. And just sort of being in the same space as you and watching you in action, I think the language sort of opened up for us at Sahas to shift away from survivor and victim to a person who has faced this. It's an incident in their life, and they're not in any way reduced to that. And the very idea of centering them as a person acknowledges that they're not single issue lives. So truly, thank you so much for cultivating that in the work that I do as well. Right, so before I let you go, how do folks find the Mitra Trust and start engaging with the sessions on offer?
So we've got our website that's up, that's got the details. We've got on Instagram. And once you sign up for the sessions, you'll receive a monthly newsletter. So even if you're not very active on social media, you don't have to be, because once you sign up, you get the monthly newsletter, and that has a roundup of our sessions and the links that go up. Every week, our links are updated and the sessions open up on the week off. So it just helps keep track of participants. And many of us get very excited about sessions and we want to attend and we sign up for it way in advance. And then at the end of the day, we don't really get there. So this just helps us with that, managing that. And I'm sure we can link it to, we can place the links and stuff wherever this is going.
Absolutely, yes. So folks who are listening in will have access to the links either in the bio if you're watching this on YouTube, or through a tag if you're watching this on Instagram straight up to the Mitra Trust's page. Thank you so much, Bhairavi. This was such a beautiful, insightful, and gentle session. And like I've said multiple times through this conversation, I truly hope folks visit the Mitra Trust, engage with some, if not all, of the programming, and just reap the benefits of it all. More power to you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Kirti. Thank you for being such an encouraging force in me doing this and me opening up completely to this space and like helping people through it. And every time I ask you questions about nuances of this and nuances, it's just so open and so kind about it all that it's just a wonderful person to interact with and to grow and learn from. And it's just been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.